Hello, this is the second half of Joshua lesson 4. We didn't have time to keep on going all the way to the end yesterday, so I'm going to finish it up now. So let me share my screen again so you can see the pictures that we were looking at last time. And you will remember that the last thing we heard was that all of Achan's family was put to death. And they built a place of stones, and they called the place the Valley of Calamity. So, after the terrible ordeal of Achan's sin, the Lord said to Joshua, "Don't be afraid or discouraged, but this time you will need to take the entire army and go to Ai. Since you have failed once, it won't be easy this time. But I have given the king of Ai and all of his people to you. This time you may keep all the riches. You may keep all the riches and the cattle and everything of Ai for yourselves." That's a very different direction. God gave Joshua a brilliant battle plan and strategy, and Joshua followed it exactly. He sent part of his army to wait in ambush behind the city, and then he advanced with the remainder of his army. When Ai's army resisted the attack, Joshua and his men retreated as if in defeat. The whole army of Ai then followed the fleeing Israelite army, leaving their city entirely unprotected. Joshua then gave the signal to the other part of his army that were waiting behind Ai. They came out of ambush and poured into the city of Ai and set it on fire. When the army of Ai looked behind them, they saw their city going up in flames and knew that they had been outwitted. Joshua and his soldiers then turned on Ai's army and had the men of Ai in a trap. As a result, all of Ai's warriors were killed, and the capture of the city of Ai was complete. God has some extremely important lessons for us to learn from this event. Notice especially that after Israel won a glorious victory over the great city of Jericho and then went up against the small town of Ai, they met failure. In our own Christian life, sometimes a victory can be won over some big sin, and yet we fail completely in some little thing, which hinders our spiritual growth and testimony, destroys our communion with the Lord, and robs us of power and joyful victory in the Christian life. In Israel's case, the first failure was disobedience. God had told them, "You are not to take any spoils from Jericho," but Achan did. Only one man disobeyed the command, but God said, "Israel has sinned." He did not just say Achan had sinned, he said Israel has sinned. This teaches us about the oneness of God's people. One person belonging to Christ cannot sin without making a result or a consequence on the whole body of Christ and the whole Christian church. Sometimes we say to ourselves when we are tempted to sin, "It won't matter if I give in. No one else will be hurt." Such thinking is wrong thinking. When Christians are a community, God's special people, just as the Israelites were. When one member sins, everyone is affected. If we have an aching tooth, our whole body feels the effects. And so it is with the body of Christ. Secondly, we see the neglect of prayer. Yes, Joshua prayed, but it was at the wrong time. He prayed after the defeat of Ai instead of asking the Lord about it before he ever sent the soldiers. He talked with men instead of talking with God. It's a wonderful thing when we're in trouble to go to the Lord. This we should do, however, if we would seek his will and plan in prayer ahead of time. There are many mistakes we could avoid. This time, When we are the most tempted to neglect prayer is after God has given us a wonderful victory. Did you know that that often is the way it happens? Another cause for Israel's defeat was self-confidence and laziness. The men of Israel apparently thought they had taken care of Jericho so well, and they're so proud of themselves. They've been shaking hands and clapping each other back that they weren't aware. They forgot that it was God that did it, and they had to be dependent on him for another success. Hadn't they captured Jericho? No, God did. Well, in this case, Israel was depending on their own reasoning instead of on spiritual might. They forgot that our weapons are only mighty if God is in control of our weapons. We can take to heart and be encouraged when we claim God's promise that with God, all things are possible. And without him, nothing is possible. We can do nothing without him. So those are some really good lessons. If we're not getting the victory over some little area of our life, we should go to him and ask him to do it for us and pray for his power and his will. So I'm going to end today, and tomorrow we're going to talk about what happens with the Gibeonites, another group of people that Israel has to defeat. Bye.